As an entrepreneur or corporate business leader, I have a fundamental question that I want to ask all of you. Are you savvy enough to keep up with the Joneses as it relates to digital transformation and product management? Seriously ask yourself, are you a leader who can get out of your own way and absorb information from the people that you're in charge of leading in order to operate an efficient operation where everyone feels involved? Well, for the purposes of our time together today, I want to focus in on the digital transformation aspect of this discussion. And as we dive in, I want to give you some facts and figures to consider. According to the management consulting firm Gartner, 91% of today's businesses are engaged in some form of digital initiative. Furthermore, 87% of business leaders say that digitalization is a top priority. And finally, the firm says that 89% of American businesses today have adopted a digital first business strategy or are planning to do so. These facts and figures should bring a smile to the face of my friend West Stringfellow. For more than 20 years, he's been a product development, management, and technology innovator and visionary. He's launched 0 to 1 innovations for companies such as Amazon and PayPal and led transitions and transformations for companies such as Target and Visa. He's also helped to lead startups such as Techstars. He successfully transitioned and sold businesses and has an entrepreneurial spirit in his own right. Stringfellow is all about market disruption and revenue growth and how the two things are intermingled. And now today, he uses his experience and expertise to help empower entrepreneurs, business leaders, and companies of all sizes to create a successful digital transformation by leveraging his experience in the field. He's the CEO and founder of How Do, which is an open source innovation curriculum which has empowered thousands of entrepreneurs to leverage digital transformation and product management to make a lot of money. In short, and Stringfellow joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. West, if you're ready, my friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn how you help businesses better position their product management strategy and artificial intelligence all at the same time. My friend, great to see you and happy Friday to you, my friend.
Happy Friday to you too, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And West, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you how you think artificial intelligence has really taken over the way we view product management and development, my friend. So, how do you think AI has made things simpler, and how do you think they've complicated things as well? What are your thoughts there?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you. I mean, you asked how my week was and what I did this week. Every week, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out the answer to that question because every week we get new capabilities. Some of the models get better. Some of the models, even though they haven't changed anything in terms of what they announced, get worse. Personally, I think that we're at a period of flux. We're in between two states. The past, humans did everything. Obviously, the future, computers are going to do large parts of many things. And I think what we're seeing every week is that the machine's ability to solve the problem of the product manager, of the technologist, gets better faster than anyone had ever assumed. And I think it's realistic to look ahead 2 to 3 years and ask, is the job of a product manager, is the job of a marketer, is the job of a developer the same? And it's going to be no. What is the job in the future? I don't know. I think when I use it, sometimes I find that it's incredibly efficient and incredibly effective, and I can rely on it. Other times, I find that I spend more time trying to get the AI to do what I'm asking, or I have to spend more time doing quality assurance on what it produced than it's worth. And so, until it's consistent, I think we're going to have inconsistent usage and lack of clarity around how to integrate it with processes. But what I see happening is there are a lot of specific tools being developed. A lot of people are taking the foundation models and building business logic or RAG or RLHF, whatever it is, to try and make the models work consistently. And as soon as that consistency is in place, I think it changes everything. I think we're talking about an entirely new world of developing any sort of digital experience in product management writ large.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, I know that you have a track record of sort of driving innovation forward for companies like Amazon, PayPal, and you've also helped lead transformations for Fortune 500 companies like Visa and Target, my friend. And I'm wondering what you've learned in that process that has fascinated you about leading larger companies to really think forward. What do you think you would say to that question there, my friend?
Kevin, I think the thing that surprises me the most about what I've learned is that most transformation, whether you're building a new product at Visa or Amazon or PayPal, or you're trying to transform a big company like Visa or Target, it's more about the people than it is about the technology. And you can have the best technology in the world, and if you put it in a company and no one uses it, it's not going to change the company. You could launch a great product, and if no one believes in it, it's not going to do anything to the P&L or to the customer. And so it took me a while, but I started to learn that if we really want to drive change in companies, whether that's build a new product or transform a company, it starts with the people. You got to get the teams on board, and the team starts, everyone in the company from entry level all the way up to the board. And then you have to get the customer on board. And that's going out and working with them and convincing them that the world's about to change, and then helping them see the change that the company's going to create for them. And both of those take time. And I think many people underestimate how much time it takes to change a human psyche to believe in a new technology or a new direction for a company. And a lot of people think that we can just take new technology, throw it in, and everything's going to be different. And it's not. And then they're frustrated because the technology is not working. But what really isn't working is people's relationship with the new product or the disruptive technology or the transformation that we're making with it. And so I've started to work from the people forward as opposed from the kind of the technology forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Wes, I know that you have over 2 decades of experience in this line of work, my friend. So I'm curious, how do you think we can use innovation and market disruption in today's business world to really continue that progress forward and use it as a competitive advantage? What are your thoughts there?
I think innovation is the most fundamental competitive advantage because companies that can innovate are literally culturally capable of innovating. It means that they have a competitive advantage at a team level that companies that cannot innovate don't. So if you have a company that's capable of building new technology, launching new products, moving into new customer segments, moving into new markets, that company is inherently more dynamic than a company that can't. And all of those are attributes of innovation. So I see innovation as, especially right now, the primary growth mechanism for companies. And so I think it's a foundational skill that a lot of companies have had the opportunity to overlook because we've had a very, very stable economy. If you look at the S&P 500, well over 60% of the companies are over 50 years old. So, we have and there's nothing wrong with old companies at all, but old companies are very stable and they don't change very much. And what we're getting ready to see with technology, both domestically and internationally, is that technology is changing a lot of things very quickly. And so if we want to keep up as a company, as executives, as individuals, or ultimately even as a country, innovation is the foundation of our progress and ultimately will be for foundation of growth for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, as you know, creating a competitive advantage is important to win over your competition. But I also think if we share innovative strategies, it can go a long way for advancement for everyone, especially for
Totally.
startups, my friend. So I'm
Totally.
curious to ask you about how you think we can learn from each other's innovative strategies. What are your thoughts there?
Look, Kevin, I totally agree with you. Like, I'm a huge advocate for open source. I took everything that I learned from my work and open sourced it. It's all available for free on How Do. And the reason I did that is, when I say everything I learned, like I didn't come into any of those companies knowing what to do. I got into those companies. I worked with really brilliant people who are way smarter than I am, and I learned what to do. And I was able to work in a bunch of different, I was able to work at Amazon, which is at the time, they were only like 15 years old. And I also got to work at Target, which at the time I worked there, I think was 70 years old. Or I worked at Visa, which was 60 years old, or PayPal, which was 10 years old. But they're both in the same industry. And seeing how the industries had evolved and how stable and secure some companies were and how dynamic and aggressive other companies were, but in the same category, I saw how the patterns of behavior can sometimes be the same and sometimes be different, and those differences are what produce rapid growth or stagnation. And so, I felt like it was my responsibility to share with everyone what I learned. And the reason I did that is because, as soon as I share it, everyone has feedback. The fastest way to hear what someone thinks is to say something on the internet. You're going to hear a different opinion. So I've heard so many different opinions about what is right and wrong with my process or what I think, I have learned. And that has helped me grow even more. So I'm a huge believer in open source. I think it's incumbent upon every innovator to share what works for them. And also, most of the valuable lessons in innovation come from failure. In fact, much more valuable lessons come from failure than from success. And all too often, the books we read, the stories we hear are about success. And, I think more people should be feel less fear sharing when they failed because the reality is 90% of innovation fails. And the more we can learn from each other about that failure, both on what we could have done operationally or technically or commercially to improve, and even how we can manage that personally, because it's very hard. I've failed. It's incredibly emotionally hard. And so the more we can share how we get through that, I think the faster we'll be able to innovate.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Wes, I'm also curious to ask you about adapting to change and how organizations, whether they're corporate or they're a startup, how important is it that they be nimble enough to adapt to change when it comes to innovation? Because we all have to be ready to service a customer at a moment's notice, and things change on a dime, don't they? So I'm wondering,
Oh, yeah.
what are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I think, this, it's being able to assess which changes to adapt to is critical. There are some changes that there are some companies that are hyper reactive. And so they'll hear about blockchain and now all of a sudden they'll focus on blockchain, or they'll hear about NFTs and now they'll focus on NFTs. And yeah, there's some value there, but I think knowing how to react to the information that we're getting is critical, and having a structure in the organization. And that could be as simple as experts who know how to assess new technologies or new competitors or new customer behaviors. That could be bringing in experts from the outside, like consultants or individuals who actually can help companies understand what's going on. Because before we adapt to something, we have to understand what it is that has changed and what that change truly means for our business, for our customer, for our technology, for how we spend our money, how we spend our time, our processes. All those things are what would actually change. And I find a lot of businesses don't kind of pause and reflect on what is happening and what that change means. But everything that is happening, in my opinion, should be analyzed. And that doesn't, a lot of people think that's a heavy amount of work. It's not. It's just doing the due diligence. Every time a new technology comes out, talk to experts, listen to experts, figure out what it means. And especially right now with AI, it has never been more efficient to analyze what's going on in the market and determine what we should be reacting to and adapting to. And then also think through using AI, how to actually adapt and react.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, I'm going to ask a bit of a self-serving question here, my friend. So I was born with cerebral palsy, Wes, and outside of hosting this podcast, it's important to me to highlight the importance of telling businesses why it's important to hire folks with disabilities. And often I tell business audiences that hiring folks with disabilities is another channel into innovation, because people with disabilities have to innovate to solve problems each and every day. From your perspective, how do you think people with disabilities can enhance the way we look at innovation as a whole? What are your thoughts there?
That's a great question, Kevin. And you know, I think that there's a couple of things that I would react to. One is the people who in every innovation, the people who are experiencing the challenge, the people who have a problem to overcome, they're the best people to solve the problem. I find that a lot of times, companies create solutions for people who have a need, have a problem, have a challenge they want to overcome, and that solution doesn't map to the actual person because they're not the customer. Working with the customer, working backwards from the customer to design solutions is how the best solutions are created. And so companies have an opportunity to work with people who have disabilities and have different abilities, and work backwards from them to figure out two things. What solutions can be created on the business side, like new products, services, experiences that could enhance the well-being, the productivity, whatever the attribute folks are looking to enhance. And the other is companies need to make the appropriate accommodations to incorporate everyone into the workplace. And I think that includes training people how to solve problems. The thing that has the single thing that has made me successful in my career is finding things that were broken in the office and fixing them. It could be a simple process that doesn't work, or it could be a very complicated piece of technology that's failing the customer. But that's all I do. I just find something that's broken, I fix it, the business grows, people are happy. It's teaching everyone how innovation works. A huge part of that mission, which is the mission I'm on, is to help people, everyone, find their way to solve the problems they encounter in the life. And there's over $380 billion the last time I checked in venture capital in Silicon Valley looking for good ideas to invest in. And the more that we can teach people who have disabilities the skills that they need to pull together a solution for incorporating into the workforce, for mobility, for whatever it may be, the more that we can actually create businesses that do that programmatically. I think, when I ran innovation for Target, actually two of the projects that we worked on specifically looked at this area. And the challenge that a company has is trying to get those investments to the top of the list relative to all other investments. And I always look at the awesome solutions that exist in the tech world most of those didn't come from big companies. They came from entrepreneurs. They came from entrepreneurs who have a very specific need. They see something that needs to exist in the world. They want the world to be different. And they build the business case, they set the vision, they raise the capital, they build the team, and they get it done. And look, I'm what I'm saying may be ableist, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong. And I apologize if what I'm about to say is, but I believe that everyone is capable of innovating. And I believe if we show people how to innovate, that they can do that. And that's to me where I see the biggest opportunity is teaching people how to solve the problems that they experience and showing them the way to raise capital to then build the solutions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that whenever someone wants to innovate and they don't have the answers, that's why you hire people to answer the questions that you don't have the answers to. And I think people with disabilities can bring a different set of eyes to a problem that can ultimately not only innovate for a company but also save them money and reduce the time that they have to train new people. Because if you show folks with disabilities a process and a system, then it's better because they want to prove that they can do the job, right? So I think
Right.
if we can eliminate the barriers to the perceived sort of narrative when it comes to hiring folks with disabilities, that's a real key to advancement. So that would be my answer there.
That's awesome. What do you think that gap is? Do you think that's training or do you think that's technology? Where do you think it is?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think it's a lack of education when it comes to people with disabilities. It is getting better, but changing the attitudinal sort of approach that businesses take to hiring folks with disabilities. And the good thing is that technology is allowing many people to do work remotely if you can't get to a physical office, or allowing people to come up with a non-traditional ways to do traditional jobs. So I think it's continuing to have the conversation about the benefits of inclusion, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, it does. Do you see people out there solving the problem? Do you think that, what more could be done?
Yeah, I think the biggest lack of people having folks with disabilities into the workforce is opportunity. So my question when I'm always asked that is creating more opportunities for discussion and for partnership. And what I mean by partnership is creating the opportunities for folks with disabilities. So I always tell business people when I talk to them west about the importance of having someone with a lived experience with a disability in your leadership team, or giving them the
Good idea.
autonomy to make decisions that affect the entire organization, because then they're invested in the process, right? So that would be my answer there.
That's a great idea, Kevin. There's one of my friends is founder of this company called Black Women on Boards, and her whole mission is exactly in the title to get Black women on the boards of public companies. There sounds like what you're talking about could be very similar, like trying to get disability representation at the highest levels of the organization so that it is in their strategies, their insights, their thinking are informed. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, and just to put a bow on that discussion, a lot of companies have created now what's called employee resource groups, which allow for their better understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bringing in speakers and other resources to elevate their understanding of how to move forward when it comes to DEI. So I think the establishment of an employee resource group, and also to make sure that people with disabilities are put in prominent roles so that um, the decision or commitment by an organization goes beyond the end of a job posting that says we're an equal opportunity employer, if that makes sense.
Very fair. No, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate that. I'll reach out to Maureen and see what she thinks about that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you can connect her with me too if you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I will. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Wes, I appreciate that discussion. So thank you for letting us indulge in that, my friend. And I'm also curious to dive into your entrepreneurial background, my friend. I know that your startup was acquired by a Fortune 50 company, and you know a thing or two about transitioning away or out of a business, my friend. So I'm curious to get your feedback on the importance of being agile in business and the importance of sort of making a successful a career or a business pivot when you want to transition out of a business. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. Boy, I think that it's the hardest thing to do in my career is setting up a team for success after I am there. I've done it a couple times. You know, when I was at Rosetta Stone and when I was at Big Commerce, uh, those companies were going in a specific direction. They had a set of challenges, and we needed to move them in another direction really quickly and overcome those challenges. And that took a lot of change in the company. We had to hire a lot of new people, and unfortunately, we had to transition a lot of people out. And you know that's a terrible thing to do. I don't enjoy that work, and I don't ever want to do it again. But what I did do well was hire a leadership team immediately, and that's what I learned when you have to do like rapid transitions, which is agility. When you're going left and you need to go right, when you're targeting one customer, you need to target another, and then you have to raise a ton of capital and build a lot of technology to make sure you address the needs of that new customer. That is the foundation of agility. At Big Commerce, we hired so many people so quickly that we made the front page of the San Francisco News because we were one of the fastest growing companies there. And one of the first people that I hired were the leaders, were the people who would replace me. I had to be the bad guy. I had to make a lot of bad decisions. And then ultimately, I didn't stick around very long because that was my job, was to be an interim transitional person. And that's where I really learned how to set a team up for success. And so I focused on hiring people who had really great leadership qualities, really good soft skills, a lot of empathy. In business, especially at an executive level, a lot of times we have to play a role. We don't get to be our whole selves at work as executives. We have to be a specific type of person for a specific reason during transitions. My type of person was someone who was ruthlessly focused on making money for the business so that it survived. And so I hired people who were not that, who were great empathetic leaders, they led with emotion, they led with their heart, they were very patient, they were good long-term investments for the company. And I hired leadership teams at Rosetta Stone and Big Commerce that stayed there for 3 years, which is a very long-term tenure. And for most of the teams that we hired, we had about 90% retention at 2 years. So again, we built teams that stuck around. And the agility part, you're going to have losses. You're going to have people who don't want to stick around because it's real dynamic. You're going to have people who can't stick around because they don't want to be dynamic. And you're going to have people like me who it's just not advisable sometimes to stick around because I have to make a bunch of bad decisions. So, then when I built my own company, I learned from that and I did the same thing. I hired great leaders. The first people I hired were the chief product officer, and she's just an incredible, incredible force. Then I hired a chief technical officer, and I hired a head of data and analytics and operations. And those three people could run the business without me. In fact, I believe any one of them could have run the entire business themselves. And by having a really strong leadership team, we can do a couple things. In the first instance, when one of us is having a bad day, as we all do, we can stand in for the other. If something is going on that's really challenging in the business, we can support one another. And if God forbid something happens and someone needs to step in, that redundancy, that capability is there. And so I've always found that like building a great leadership team that has a complement of skills where some people are more emotional, some people are more data, some people are more personal, and some people are more technical. That is a complete leadership team. I think a lot of companies that struggle to be agile have like one or two personas or personalities that lead the company. And if anything changes in the company and that personality doesn't change, very hard for the company to change. So, I think it's about having a team with complementary skills that's willing to support one another. And I think it's also sometimes, unfortunately, about making some really tough decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Wes, I'm curious to get your feedback on this. What do you think it means to create a product that's both innovative and useful? How do you strike that delicate balance in your view, my friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think it depends on who you're asking what useful means, right? So if you're asking the board what is useful, they may be like revenue growth. And if you're asking the customer what is useful, they may be like cheap, free. And so trying to figure out like who your customer is when you're determining value is really important. And when you're in a big public company, you can make decisions that look like Amazon, for example, gives away a lot of products that are competitively priced, they would say, but are practically free. Like they sell them below cost. Whereas startups, you could do that when interest rates were zero interest. When interest rates were zero. Now interest rates at 6%, you can't do that. You have to have a profitable business. So I tend to look at the utility usefulness in terms of the contribution to the fundamentals of the business. Every business has to grow revenue, decrease costs, mitigate risks, delight customers, empower employees. Businesses that do those five things well, they thrive. Now, businesses that do one extra thing, which is innovate, to your question, they're the ones that truly separate themselves. And so to be useful, you have to get the five things right. To be a superlative business, to truly be an outstanding business, you have to innovate. And all innovation is like literally, it's one of those words that's been used so much it's kind of meaningless. But all it is to change things. And so if you have to grow revenue, decrease costs, mitigate risk, et cetera, all innovation is changing how you grow revenue or changing how you decrease costs, changing how you mitigate risk, changing how you delight customers, changing how you empower employees. And companies that consistently experiment with how they change, like literally not just change things, but change the way they change things, change the processes that they use different technologies, bring in new talents, those companies ultimately thrive. But it all starts, again, determining what to do. It all starts working backwards from your customer. There are some times in business where your customer is a board and you have to do what they need you to do so that you get that next round of funding, so that you can survive, so that you can keep your employees receiving a paycheck. There are other times in business where your customer is the end user and they're going to pay you money for the service or good that you give them. And knowing how to balance those different customers, your board or your investor customers, and then the end user is a tricky thing. And again, that's why I think having a great leadership team is critical, because having that collective brain trust, you can determine what things need to be more based on utility, usefulness, and what things need to be more based on innovation, creating new solutions. And in that balance, which is just never a black and white, it's always a mixture. In that balance is how successful companies succeed. And you can see this, a good example of this is, Amazon will have these waves of innovation. They had a big wave of innovation with retail from 1994 to 2004. And then they really haven't done much retail innovation since then, but they've done a ton of technology innovation with AWS. And then that kind of matured. And then they did a ton of innovation with media. So launching new digital video products and launching new TV shows. And now they have a wave of innovation with advertising. And each one of those waves builds on the other and allows the company to maintain its utility at its foundation. It's still a great retailer, but also innovate by building new lines of business on top of that foundation, which makes them a very successful company.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, I know that your passion and pride now is helping entrepreneurs leverage your experience in both product development and management and innovation, my friend, and which ultimately leads to digital transformation. So tell me about the good work that you do at How To, my friend, and why that integrates or like your fire to get up every morning. Tell me more, my friend.
Yeah, dude, Kevin, I'm kind of a nerd there. I love innovation. It's literally my favorite thing. Like, if I could do that every day, all day, it's literally all I would do. And so, I was lucky enough to sell my company, and this the second that I was supposed to be going on vacation, on the plane to where we were going for the first vacation, I was hiring a team and building a team that would teach people how to innovate. And so what we do at How Do is just that. We show entrepreneurs and executives how they can use innovation best practices to accelerate growth in their companies. And this isn't about, like, coming in with fancy technologies like blockchain, NFT, AI. It's really about understanding the team, understanding the customer, and looking at the competitors in the market, finding where growth is happening organically, and then trying to get the business aligned with that growth in the first instance so that the business grows by standing still. Once the business is growing naturally, then we look at things like, how can we spend money to grow inorganically, rapidly? How can we buy new technologies, buy new companies, get new talent, try new strategies, chase new customers, things like that. And all of that we determine by using data. Now we use a lot of AI because it's just so efficient. I'm able to get strategies. I mean, this is the crazy thing, Kevin. Like, there are strategies that I can do now in a couple hours that used to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars and take weeks. So, I mean, with AI, almost every company could build incredible strategies, and we spend a lot of time doing that, getting the decision about where we're going to go correct, and then I help them execute. I help them hire the team, build the technology, and get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, what do you think is the correlation between market growth and revenue generation? What do you think is the correlation there, my friend? How are those two things specifically interconnected in your view?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I remember when I was at Target, uh, I was coaching a team that they were trying to figure out how to get their category to grow. And they had, I mean, Target is some of the most incredibly creative and wonderful people. And they had all these brilliant ideas. And I went across this big wall of ideas, literally wall, and then big panels with different pitches on each of them. And I went around and listened to everyone's pitch. And the thing that everyone missed, they had beautiful ideas, beautiful customers, beautiful visions, beautiful designs, but not one of them told me how big the market was and how much that market was growing. And then you looked at what was actually growing at Target or other retailers, and it wasn't beautiful visions. It was simple things that people needed more of. And so, the growth of the market is foundational for the growth of the business. You can have the best idea, but if it's not in a big and growing market, it's probably not going to grow very efficiently. You could probably spend a lot of money marketing it, convincing people to buy it, but you can spend a lot less money if you just put it in a growing market and solve the problem. And the way that I explained it to that team is, if you were in a canoe and your goal was to reach the ocean, the biggest pool of revenue possible, would you put your canoe in a river that was a tiny little trickle, or would you put your canoe in the Mississippi River that has the most amount of water, the highest velocity, and the best depth, and you guaranteed to get to the ocean? Right? You're going to put your canoe in the thing that's going to guarantee to get you to the ocean. So if you're trying to build a new business, put it in a large and growing market that's going to connect with the largest and growing market. That's how you scale. And I think a lot of people think that they can paddle upstream or dig their own river to the ocean. And you can if you're a billionaire. But for the rest of us, it's just get in the biggest river and paddle hard.
Yeah, and Wes, to that point, I know that you're someone that's constantly looking at ways to evolve and change your approach when it comes to product development and technology, my friend. And I think that one of the biggest roadblocks we have in entrepreneurship today is people get so enamored with their own idea and how it's
Totally.
how it's supposed to work. Because they're not open to the idea of evolving their approach. And I know it's something that you think is vital to success in business. So I wonder if you could tell me more, my friend.
Dude, thank you so much for that question, Kevin. You like totally hit the nail on the head. I mean, the single cause that I have seen, the single greatest cause of founder success is falling in love with the customer. The single greatest cause of founder failure is falling in love with your idea. People who fall in love with the customer, they go and listen to the customer, they empathize with the customer. And if they do that well, and the customer feels like they have a connection, the customer will tell the founder, the customer will tell the CEO, the team, whoever it is, this is my problem that I need solved. And here are some ideas I have to solve it. And if you can get that information out of the customer, it's real efficient to then build a solution. And you're also creating a relationship with someone, like a real human to human relationship, where you can actually go back and say, hey, does this work for you? And what price point would you pay for it? Where do you want to learn about it? Who do you want to like listen to? Like what influencer should we use? Where do we want to market it? All the questions that you have to answer to bring a product to market can be answered by just talking with the customer. Now, on the other hand, if you're a CEO and you have an idea and you go talk to the customer and you're like, buy my product, buy my product. Do you want to buy my product? What do you think about my product? Tell me what you think about my product. The customer's like, whoa, dude, like I'm not really trying to be sold something right now. I'm just like a human. And so I think, the empathy that we bring to our company towards the customer will ultimately embed itself in the culture that we build at the company. That'll define the processes, that'll define the technologies and the operations, and ultimately that'll define the goods and services that are sold. And so if we start with the place from empathy with the customer, design thinking is great for that. Getting empathy with the customer, jobs to be done theory, another great one for that. Get empathy with the customer. You're more likely to build a successful business. If you start with your idea and you're just in love with your idea and you don't listen to the customer, you have a very high, like above 90% chance rate of failure.
Yeah, and Wes, you brought on something that sparked my interest. So I'm going to follow up by asking you, how do you think we can avoid getting trapped by artificial intelligence or AI? And what I mean by that is, yes, it's been great for the advancement side of making business tasks more easier or faster or more efficient. Well, but how do we make sure that we don't lose the human connection and rely too heavily on AI? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's the question of the moment. I think that is the thing that I struggle with the most, and I see other folks who are trying to build businesses struggle with the most. Is it's easy to hide behind the keyboard. It's easy to hide behind Zoom. It's easier than that just to talk to GPT or to talk to Claude or whatever AI you use. And that's that our what makes us human, the human to human connection, the communication that happens when we're in front of another person, the tone of voice, the movement of hands, the movement of eyes, that is all part of communication. And you're never going to get that from GPT or AI, and AI is never going to be able to interpret that to the level that humans can, not for a while. And so I think that while it's easy to hide behind a screen and use AI as a proxy for the customer for at least the next 5 to 6 years, my guess, there's going to be no replacement for go and talking to the customer. And then that's just on figuring out what to do. If we think about long term, what if everyone can use AI to build a business, then the business itself is a commodity, right? Everyone can build an app, everyone can build a whatever. Well, if the business is a commodity, what's the value that we're going to get between business? If everyone can build an Amazon or an eBay, then the value is going to be the relationships between the business and the customer. And the more that founders and teams have those relationships with the customers and use those relationships to fortify the brand and allow the customer to develop a loyal relationship with the brand and the team, the more that company is going to endure. And so right now, if we think about it, this is the time to be establishing those relationships. especially if you have existing customers. This is the time to lean in and really cultivate a real relationship with your customers. Communicate with them, solve their problems, bring them into the company, and help them understand how they can accelerate your growth, and then give them the solutions they need. And that is how good companies grow. The alternative to that is we're going to have a lot of people pushing out a lot of apps that have no customers, and that's been going on forever. If you look at the App Store, I think in the Google App Store, there's like 3.5 million apps. The average American uses 7 in a week. So, there's 3.5 million apps that no one uses because people didn't go interact with the customer and figure out if they want to use it. And that's only going to explode. So I think now in particular, having human to human connection, not hiding behind AI, is one of the primary competitive advantages.
Do research before you build, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Wes, I'm also curious to ask you about the power of podcasts and social media in order to successfully market or develop a product. Because, a lot of business people want to get on podcasts now to give them a free medium to promote their product. So tell me about leveraging podcasts and social media effectively to market or manage a product. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, the thing that I sold to Target was a patent for doing just that, was mapping social media influencers to retail products. And the platform that we ultimately built was that as well. And so I'm a big believer in it. Now, that said, if you look at my social media, you would say this guy is terrible at it. And that's true. I have terrible, terrible fears of being on camera. I went to improv classes for a year to get over it because I used to literally have panic attacks before I got in front of cameras or on stage. And I think it's one of those things that's just foundational to business now. You got to do it. You got to get out there. I've been doing podcasts now for a couple years. Most recently, for the last couple months, I've been really leaning into it. It's been great. The number of people who have reached out to me from all over the world who I never would have had the opportunity to meet has been fantastic. And then, on how do I open source these courses? And I've heard from people from over 100 countries. And that's so awesome because I never would have heard from these people. I never would have got to understand their specific needs. For example, I used to have all of my content on how to just on the web, but someone from Kenya reached out and said, "Hey, my village wants to learn how to innovate, but we don't have internet connection. Can you make printouts?" And I was like, I never even thought of that. And so I started making these really beautifully designed printouts. And then because I did those printouts, someone from Turkey called, an education minister, and was like, "Hey, can we use these as textbooks? Can we translate them and use them as textbooks?" And I was like, "Yep, send them over." And, they translated them there. So I think it's so foundational to connect with your customers by putting a face and an actual human being on the other end of the business. And then in terms of like what's the right channel? Is it podcasting versus social? I find in business that podcasting is just a more professional format. I haven't quite figured out how to do like the social media thing for business. I'm not good at that, but I can do teaching and I can do consulting and I can do podcasts because podcasts are kind of like a conversation and I feel comfortable here.
Hey, well, like the old uh, 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 saying goes, my friend, we've got a solution to that, or at least a person to hire to fix that, right?
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Hey, well, so I want to end on a two-part question. I want to know, for you personally, my friend, what brings you the most joy outside of the boardroom? And when you think of your own personal and professional legacy, my friend, how do you want that to be defined?
Boy, those are great questions. Bringing me the most joy is probably my cats and my friends and my loved ones, like just love, and animals writ large. I love animals and nature. I grew up on a ranch. And so like being in nature, being near animals is like the best thing in the world. Being in nature near animals with my friends and family, the best. In terms of and lifting weights, I love lifting weights. Like that is so. If I lift weights for 2 hours, I'm the most peaceful you'll ever find me. And then in terms of legacy, look, I just hope that I'm remembered as someone who was loved people fully, and gave everything that I had to literally everything that I had to the causes that I believe. And I hope that the people that I love feel that love. And I hope that the causes that I believe in feel that contribution. And, in the last couple of years, I've had the kind of privilege of helping several of my family members die. And, in those last hours and days and weeks, that's a lot of the stuff that they talk about. And, I just hope to be able to go out like that, like looking back and thinking people felt my love and I gave back.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, my friend, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
LinkedIn. I'm the most active on LinkedIn or Howdo. If you sign up on Howdo, I send emails.
Fantastic. Well, my friend, I could talk to you for 2 more hours, but I'll end our initial conversation there, my friend. I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing in business and product innovation, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for the opportunity, man. I'm going to connect you with Maureen. I really appreciate what you do as well.